Next order.
Order number 8, motion by Honorable Abdunur Desa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I am Honorable Teno Abdunur, member representing Elwak South. Mr. Speaker, I raise to move the following motion. Aware that Part 2 of 4th Schedule to the Constitution of Kenya 2010 provides for function of the county government, which includes, among others, refuse removal, refuse dumps, solid waste disposal, control of air pollution, and implementation of specific national government policies on natural resources and environmental conservation. Further, aware that Article 43(1) of the Constitution 2010 outlined that every person has the right to clean and healthy environment, which includes the right to have the environment protected for the benefit of the present and future generation through legislation. Concerned that there has been careless disposal of waste such as medical waste, asbestos, and harmful chemical to the environment. Further concerned that asbestos waste have hazardous material that may cause chronic health problems such as asbestosis, lung cancer, especially if handled without caution. Acknowledging that the National Environment Management, NEMA, has established guidelines on disposal of asbestos waste and other waste treatment, this County Assembly urged the County Executive to enforce: 1. To enforce NEMA guidelines on safe management and disposal of asbestos in all buildings in the county. 2. Establish regulation on county solid waste management in the county. 3. Ensure construction, building of public institutions with asbestos roofing be replaced with galvanized iron sheet in order to avoid the health and environmental risks associated with asbestos, financial year 2021. Mr. Speaker, this motion is to address the changes of the roofing from all public institutions. Mr. Speaker, it is during 1985 that most of these roofing were placed on public institutions, especially hospitals. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, Mandera County Referral Hospital roofing is asbestos, Elwak the same way, Takaba the same way. Mr. Speaker, asbestos are classified as non-human carcinogen, and there is sufficient evidence to that effect, Mr. Speaker, like lung cancer. Mr. Speaker, asbestos contained roofing release poison to the air, especially if it ages, because I just told you it is since 1985, it's very ancient, dilapidated, and through some physical impact like repair and renovation. Finally, Mr. Speaker, there is also a disease associated with that called asbestosis, that any materials contained in that product causes disease called asbestosis that are serious and chronic but non-cancerous respiratory diseases with no effective treatment, hence very fatal. Mr. Speaker, in this county of ours, for almost now 7 years down the line, we are grateful that we have enormous resource, but it has never attracted the attention of the government to replace those simple materials that is very hazardous to the community. And with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I wish to seek Mr. Honorable Shaban to second. Thank you.
Honorable members, I propose that this Assembly urge the Executive to enforce NEMA guidelines on safe management and disposal of asbestos in all buildings in the county. 2. Establish regulation on county solid waste management in the county. 3. Ensure construction of buildings of public institutions with asbestos roofing be replaced with galvanized iron sheet in order to avoid the health and environmental risks associated with asbestos for the financial year 2020-2021.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, in fact, the issue of asbestos, changing them to galvanized iron sheets is something which is in the right direction. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, we are in the assembly, and all of us, you can see we have a face mask just because of the coronavirus. If now iron sheets, which we are, all of us, at least one way or the other, we got contact with them, this asbestos. I remember Nomadic Primary School in Ramu. The whole of that institution, which is a school where children are attending to, the whole that institution has got asbestos. Mr. Speaker, sir, we are even wondering why these companies in Kenya who are manufacturing iron sheets like asbestos just allowed like that in this country. This is already causing cancer. Most of Kenyans are suffering from cancer and they cannot treat themselves. It is expensive. And most of people have died, and these companies should have already been put into task and even contribute to the medical bill of these people who are suffering of cancer. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is better immediate action to be taken by NEMA, by this county, to make sure that all those premises where these asbestos are there should already be condemned, and make sure that those roofs are replaced. This is a good move, so that it will going to save many people from going to suffering from this all lung cancers and asbestosis. There are many diseases which are associated to this. Mr. Speaker, sir, on the grounds of having an environment which is solid waste disposal. In fact, I was one of the victims where it is in my ward where this solid waste normally goes. And there was no bill to this. I was just called by a KPR and saying that there is a vehicle carrying solid waste to Carro. I have to go to Madawasko and ask them what happened. They asked me to allow them for the time being so that they have at least a place to put the waste, but it's not late. A bill has not come to do that, so that it can go through the assembly. So some people used to pay some money to the community around Carro, dig a very big hole, put that waste, and then later they pay those people who are around there. Mr. Speaker, sir, such hazards and maybe something which have environmental impacts should immediately be addressed and be brought to the assembly so that we can do something about it. I support the motion. Thank you.
I stand to support the motion as it is before the House. Mr. Speaker, one of my expertise is respiratory diseases as a medical professional, and I need to give some professional aspect on this. And Mr. Speaker, asbestos, why was it used in the first place? Asbestos normally contains 6 elements that if it's going to be inhaled or it's going to be ingested, it directly goes to the lungs. Mr. Speaker, why was asbestos used in the first place during the 1985s and the rest? Because most of the exporters of asbestos are Russia and China. Now, it is flexible, it is soft, it is resistant to heat and electricity, and it is also resistant to corrosion. That is why initially it was used. But later, it was found out that the ingestion or the inhalation of this asbestos material can actually damage the lungs. Once this substance, microscopic substances, goes to the lungs, at the basis of the lungs, it causes what is called inflammation, Mr. Speaker. After the inflammation subsides, it becomes scarring. It heals with the scars, Mr. Speaker. After scarring, Mr. Speaker, it now can lead to cancers. And there are many cancers that this asbestos can actually lead to. I have seen a first-hand patient who suffered from asbestos disease in Kenyatta National Hospital. And this is a male over 60 years who has worked in a factory where asbestos are made for over 20, 30 years, Mr. Speaker. And I can assure you, once a person gets a cancer of the lungs due to asbestos, then the recovery is almost zero, Mr. Speaker, because that old man was ever on oxygen throughout his life. And there was no hope of him coming back to life, Mr. Speaker, because he had to depend on oxygen. It is not only the cancer that this asbestos causes. Normally, the lining of the lungs has got 2 layers, Mr. Speaker, and those 2 layers, in between those 2 layers is what medically we call pleura. It is just an empty space which can be actually occupied by fluids. And once it is occupied by fluids or becomes inflamed or gets heated, there are many diseases that can lead to. One of them is called pleural effusion, where there is going to be a fluid that accumulates around the lungs, Mr. Speaker. Others is called pleuritis, where between those 2 layers, Mr. Speaker, it becomes inflamed. It becomes heat with many, many, many symptoms, Mr. Speaker, and the person normally complains of chronic chest pain, Mr. Speaker. And not only that, Mr. Speaker, there is also what is called pleural thickening, Mr. Speaker, where the spaces between the lungs, now those 2 layers of the lungs become thick, and there's even no space, and there's adhesion, what you call adhesion, where the 2 spaces normally stick together. Mr. Speaker, there are many, many, many diseases that can result as a result of asbestos, Mr. Speaker. Maybe those times we were in another century. Now we are in a 21st century, Mr. Speaker. And the use of asbestos is discouraged all over the world, Mr. Speaker. Even though asbestos can be used in many other aspects like cloth making, but every country now is going towards the 21st century revolution. And they are looking at all the buildings, in public buildings, because most of those buildings that normally has this type of iron sheets is normally the public institutions. They are now replacing all the asbestos roofings in their counties. And Mandera should not be the one to be left behind. And therefore, I want to support the honorable member for Elbach South when he came up with this motion that all those old buildings which has got asbestos, the county should budget it and actually be removed. And one of the problem with the only problem with the motion, it has no budgetary line. It has to have which financial year the government is supposed to do this, because this one comes with a cost. And it is one of the elements of a motion that has to be considered, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, also, these old buildings, there are methods you can do the test. There's normally a test kit that is in the market. That can be done to prove that your building has got actually asbestos or not. The county can actually buy that, and they can implement that and do the testing of this building so that if it is element of asbestos, then it can be prevented. But above all, what is important is the new buildings now. All the new buildings that is coming up must be asbestos-free. So, Mr. Speaker, I stand to support the motion. Thank you.
Honorable Orio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I rise to support. I think Honorable Kula have said it very well. And Mr. Speaker, anything that touches on the health of this population must be of our general concern. And once the Honorable member representing Elwak South have actually realized that this kind of roofing is available in our health facility, especially Mandera County Referral Hospital. And the way the member for Lalue, Mheshimiwa Rafat, said that it's also available in his ward. Speaker, we should actually start counting the number of facilities that this roof is being covered. And again, Mr. Speaker, this motion is budget-related motion. And I want to say this is the right time for this motion, because we are trying to send a signal and an advice to the executive to consider it into the budget. This is timely. It touches on the life of this population. That's why I support. So Speaker, and I think you know, normally we move motion and we leave it again. So Speaker, I know my brother, the able member for Elwak South, is the chair for also implementation. I want him to give it a very good attention on this. Especially also the chair for budget is around here. So Speaker, if you know this kind of roof is affecting our population and people are dying, and you know we are the representative of this population, I think this is a very good move. And I want to thank the member for Elwak South for actually noticing this and bringing to the attention of this honorable house. Speaker, let us not leave this motion after when we pass. What is more important is passing it and making sure that this is implemented in this financial year. Because, Mr. Speaker, we are the mouthpiece of this population. Speaker, I want to seek your indulgence, because you are the chair today here, when this motion is being discussed. I think after approving, if this kind of roofing is available on the facility of Mandera County Referral Hospital, the chair for health is here. We should give him an assignment to confirm, Mr. Speaker, to make sure how many houses is being covered by this kind of roof. After when we will approve this, we must give it a weight, make sure that this is actually implemented. Otherwise, we should not only approve and leave it behind, Mr. Speaker. I support, and I want also honorable members to give this motion a very good attention to make sure that it's being implemented. Thank you.
Honorable Shaban.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the motion. Mr. Speaker, asbestos is a natural minerals product which was resistant to heat and corrosions, and was extensively used in the past for making floor tiles, insulations, and roofing. Mr. Speaker, this product has been found to be hazardous, and exposure to these chemicals called asbestos can cause serious health hazards, the one Honorable Kula has mentioned. This asbestos, the roofing you have been seeing all over Mandera County, especially staff quarters, Mandera MCH, Mandera Referral Hospital quarters, nomadic primary schools, Elwak sub-county hospitals. These asbestos release a microscopic dust or fibers which are in the air, and once you inhale, it goes directly to the lungs. And once it goes to the lungs, it blocks the blood vessels which supply the lung, called alveoli. Once it blocks, it interferes with elasticity of the lungs. The movement, contraction, and relaxation of the lungs are interfered with. So it predisposes one to lungs cancer. When these things was done, in 1980s, was the NEMA in USA discovered that there are so many people who work in asbestos industries, in the roofing sectors, developed lung cancer. So its use has been banned totally, and those building with asbestos roofing has been replaced with other roofing materials. Therefore, as a county, we should be mindful of our staff and our, our citizen. This roofing has to be replaced with more environmentally friendly roofing materials. Mr. Speaker, exposures usually happens with long-term exposure, especially after that these cancers are being noted or exhibit after long exposure, which is 20 to 40 years. So now these things are aging, is releasing this microscopic fiber dust to the environment. So it is high time the county replace these buildings. Ideally, if you are supposed to visit these hospital quarters or nomadics, you should be in mask to avoid this dust, to inhale this dust. I rise to support, and this thing has to be replaced in this, even this financial year 2020-2021. Thank you.
Honorable Bishar Malabdullah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm Honorable Bishar Malabdullah, MCA for Takaba Ward. Mr. Speaker, I think the motion is a very important motion that touches on the lives of our community in this Mandera County at large, Mr. Speaker. It has no borders, and it's worthwhile. Mr. Speaker, this is a very poisonous substances that are emitted, and that can cause public health, Mr. Speaker. And more importantly, it has caused maybe the increase of cancer and other related disease, Mr. Speaker, in terms of public health. Mr. Speaker, this is a very critical motion which needs to be dealt by the county government as fast as possible, Mr. Speaker. The roofings that this asbestos are really concerned with are not many, Mr. Speaker, and it doesn't involve much amount of money. Mr. Speaker, I think starting from this financial year, because it is touching, it's a very chronic substance, we need to assist our county, especially the executive, to do away with this roofing for asbestos, and they be replaced with a galvanized iron sheet, which are actually easily within our reach, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, more importantly is about the motions that are passed in this House, Mr. Speaker, and most of them has not been implemented. The question is about how many of our motions that are passed through in the first sitting of the Assembly and this second Assembly, how many motions have been passed through this place and how many have not been implemented, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, I think no member of this Assembly can oppose this motion, and I just request you to put to question so that it is fast-tracked for implementation, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Honorable Minority Whip.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, you know, when I hear of a substance that causes, increases the chances of one getting cancer, it's really a concern. And we know in Madera County we lose more people to cancer-related diseases than even the so-called coronavirus, which people so much fear. But, Mr. Speaker, I see it's a welcome, the motion is good, but I will have preferred, Mr. Speaker, if the member who has proposed the motion will have said, it is not all, first of all, it is not only in the public places where materials which may have this substance are used. The public are already using, and they are oblivious of the risks involved. The people in the homes where these, the roofings with this substance, the homes, the water, people who use at homes are more than the people who are using it in the public places. You don't expect a member of the public to use the roofing in Madera County Assembly or in the referral hospital, but the same public we are, want to protect are using the same roofing in their villages. So what is the essence? I am unable to understand the rationale behind saying, you just incur unnecessary expenses that you remove all in the public places, but the public are not sensitized in the risk involved. So it is +1 - 1, Mr. Speaker, it will not add any value. Let us not just motions just because we want to pass motion for the sake. let us defer the debate of this motion, enrich it. It is very important, but you know, it needs, Mr. Speaker, to be enriched further, Mr. Speaker, before we pass it. You cannot just stop building in the public places. The public sensitization aspect is not there. The public continue using it. Then in the few public hospitals, you want to remove it. So, Mr. Speaker, I humbly request the debate of this motion to be deferred, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Honorable Tieno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as much as I welcome the opinion and concern of the honorable member, Mr. Speaker, I really doubt whether he has really absorbed the content of this thing. Mr. Speaker, what we are trying to address is asbestos roofing, which after thorough investigation, we only realized that it is in public places, which are not only public, but the old and the ancient ones, which were built back 1980s, when they said asbestos materials were largely in use. Mr. Speaker, the honorable members just say that it is there also in the village. It is unused to this house, and Mr. Speaker, let him just maybe verify more and tell us which village has got such things. Thank you.
I think each and every member has the right to contribute the motion the way he's thinking. But at the end of the day, when we put the motion, there will be another option of taking it nay or ayes. Honorable members, I now give the chance to the owner of the motion. Honorable Tero, move over to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also wish to take this opportunity to thank all the members who have really find this motion necessary at this time and supported it. And I request you to put the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, I now put the question that this assembly urges the county executive to enforce NEMA guidelines on the safe management and disposal of asbestos in all buildings in the county. 2, establish regulations on county assembly, county solid waste management in the county. 3, ensure construction of buildings of public institutions with asbestos roofings to replace with galvanized iron sheets in order to avoid the health and environmental risk associated with asbestos for the financial year 2020-2021. As many as of that opinion say aye. As many as of contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. Next order.